What would you do if everything you had worked for, every dream, every plan, was suddenly taken away from you in an instant? The question lingered in the air like an unwanted cloud, and for Emily, it was no longer hypothetical. It was her reality. She sat alone in her car, the engine idling as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the deserted parking lot. The campus behind her was quiet, the echoes of laughter and cheers from graduation just a distant memory. The noise of celebration had faded, but the weight of everything that had just happened crushed her chest. She had finished, crossed the stage, smiled for the camera, but now, in the silence of her car, she felt as though she had lost everything. The graduation ceremony had been everything it was supposed to be: joyful, filled with pride, and full of promises for the future. But now, sitting here, the reality of it all seemed so different. She had walked across that stage with her head held high, but what came next? What was supposed to come next? She had no idea. The future that everyone else had mapped out for her felt so distant, so wrong. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning, Emily muttered to herself, though she wasn't recording anything for social media. She just needed to hear something, anything. Her eyes shifted to the rearview mirror. There, reflected back at her, was a young woman who looked like she had it all together: sharp graduation cap, crisp gown, and that perfect smile she'd practiced for months. But underneath that facade was a storm of confusion and doubt. The face staring back at her wasn't the Emily she thought she'd become. The Emily who was supposed to be excited about new opportunities. The Emily who had always dreamed of making a difference in the world. But instead, she felt lost. "What now?" she whispered, her voice barely rising above the hum of the car's engine. The day had started like any other graduation day, filled with excitement and a sense of accomplishment. But as soon as she had tossed her cap in the air and hugged her friends goodbye, the weight of what came next had descended on her. She wasn't ready. She didn't feel prepared. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, pulling her out of her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from her mom. "Call me when you can. Love you." Emily's finger hovered over the screen, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. Not yet. She wasn't sure what to say. Everything seemed so uncertain. Her mind wandered back to the night before, when she and her family had celebrated her graduation. Her mom had been so proud, her dad had barely said anything, lost in his own world, and her younger brother had distracted himself with his phone. The typical family dynamic. She had smiled and nodded through the dinner, but as the night had dragged on, a small voice inside her kept asking, "What's next for me? What's next for Emily?" She had always been the good daughter, the one who did what was expected, who got the grades, followed the rules, and made sure everyone else was happy. But now, sitting in her car, she wondered if she had done it for herself or if she had done it for them. For her mom, who wanted her to follow in her footsteps. For her dad, who had always pressured her to succeed. For everyone else, but never for herself. And the uncertainty of the future hit harder than any graduation speech or celebratory toast ever could. "Why am I doing this?" she murmured to herself. "Why am I so scared of what's to come?" Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a knock on the window. Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat. She had been so deep in thought, she hadn't even noticed anyone approaching. She glanced up, startled, and saw the face of the high school principal, Mr. Thompson, standing outside her car. She rolled the window down, a confused expression crossing her face. "Emily," Mr. Thompson said with a warm smile, though there was something about his tone that suggested he wasn't here for a casual chat. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" Sure, I guess," Emily replied, her voice tinged with confusion. Mr. Thompson opened the door and slid into the passenger seat. His demeanor was calm, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had never expected to see him after graduation, not like this. I hope I'm not disturbing you, he began, his voice gentle but serious. I just wanted to check in. You know, we always get caught up in the ceremony, the speeches, the photos, but it's easy to forget that graduation is a big transition. And transitions, well, they can be overwhelming. Emily nodded slowly, unsure of where this conversation was heading. She hadn't been expecting this. She hadn't been expecting anything, really. I don't know what I'm doing, she blurted out before she could stop herself. The words were out before she even realized how vulnerable they made her sound. She had never admitted that out loud to anyone, not even to her closest friends. But there it was, the truth that had been eating away at her. Mr. Thompson regarded her with a knowing look. It's okay to feel that way, Emily, he said. You're not alone. It's a big world out there, and sometimes it's hard to figure out where you fit in. But just because it feels overwhelming doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Emily looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. What do you mean? I don't know what my path is anymore. I thought I did, but now, I'm not so sure. Mr. Thompson leaned back in his seat, his gaze thoughtful. You might not have all the answers now, and that's perfectly okay. Sometimes, life doesn't go according to the plans we set out. But I can tell you this, you have what it takes to figure it out. You've always had it. Emily didn't respond at first. She just stared at him, his words sinking in slowly. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of her confusion was too strong. Thanks, she said quietly, though the words didn't quite capture the swirl of emotions she was feeling. Mr. Thompson smiled gently. Take your time. You're going to find your way. And when you do, I have no doubt it'll be something incredible. Just trust yourself. With that, he stood up, gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder, and walked away. Emily watched him go, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time that day, something in her shifted. She wasn't sure what, but the knot of uncertainty seemed to loosen just a little. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the empty parking lot, Emily sat back in her car, staring out at the horizon. The future was still uncertain, but maybe, just maybe, she was ready to face it. And that, she realized, was enough for now. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily had always been the type of person who followed the rules. From a young age, she learned that doing what was expected of her was the easiest way to stay out of trouble. She had earned good grades, made friends easily, and always managed to stay out of the drama that seemed to swirl around her peers. But even with all of this, she couldn't escape the feeling that she wasn't truly living her own life. Growing up in a small suburban town, Emily's childhood had been like many others. She had a loving mother, a quiet father, and a younger brother named Ethan who always kept to himself. The picture of a happy, perfect family on the outside. But beneath the surface, there was a tension that she couldn't ignore. Her father, a quiet man who worked long hours at a local law firm, had always been distant. He was the kind of father who came home late, sat at the dinner table without saying much, and then retreated to his study for the rest of the evening. Emily never really understood him. He wasn't cruel or unkind. He was just absent. Her mother, on the other hand, was full of energy and expectations. She had big dreams for Emily. You're going to be someone special, Emily, she would say with a gleam in her eye. I know it. You've always been such a bright girl. Emily tried to live up to her mother's expectations, but she wasn't always sure what that even meant. Her mother's ambitions were clear. She wanted her daughter to go to a prestigious college, to become someone important, to have a career that was admired. And for a while, Emily did everything she could to make that happen. When Emily was in middle school, her mother pushed her to take part in every extracurricular activity possible. Dance, debate club, volunteer work, anything that would look impressive on a college application. Emily, not wanting to disappoint her mother, went along with it all. She did her homework on time, kept up with her social obligations, and never once stepped out of line. But as the years passed, Emily began to feel suffocated by the pressure. It wasn't just her mother's ambitions, it was the expectations that seemed to come from everywhere. Teachers, friends, society, all telling her that she needed to excel, to achieve, to prove herself. But through it all, Emily couldn't help but wonder, was this really what she wanted? In high school, things didn't get any easier. Emily was at the top of her class, captain of the debate team, and president of the student council. Everyone praised her for being so driven, so focused, so perfect. But inside, Emily felt like she was losing herself. Her mother's praise and her father's silence became a constant reminder that she wasn't doing this for herself, she was doing it to meet everyone else's expectations. The thought of her future filled her with dread rather than excitement. Then came graduation day. Emily had done everything right. She had secured a spot at a prestigious college, earned high honors, and had a perfect GPA. Her friends and family celebrated, congratulating her for everything she had accomplished. But deep down, Emily felt a gnawing emptiness that she couldn't shake. It was as if the life she had been living was someone else's script, and now she was expected to perform it flawlessly. The weight of it all hit her hard as she sat in her car after the ceremony, feeling the cool metal of the steering wheel beneath her fingers. She hadn't made the decision to go to college on her own. It was something that had been decided for her. It was the next step, the only step, and she had followed it blindly. As she stared at the empty parking lot, Emily realized that she was at a crossroads. She had done everything that was expected of her, but now she had to figure out what she wanted. Her mind drifted to her childhood, to the quiet nights when she would lie awake in bed, wondering what her life would be like if she wasn't following someone else's path. She had always dreamed of painting, of being an artist. But it was never something she could voice to anyone, least of all her mother. Art was something that didn't fit into the neat boxes of success and achievement that had been outlined for her. It wasn't practical. It wasn't stable. It wasn't the future her mother had envisioned for her. But now, standing at the threshold of adulthood, Emily wondered if it was time to start making her own decisions. She could feel the pull of something deep inside her, a longing to break free from the mold she had been forced into. She didn't know where it would lead, but she couldn't ignore the need to find her own way. For the first time in a long time, Emily felt something akin to hope. There was a chance, just a chance, that she could carve out a future for herself that wasn't defined by the expectations of others. But it wasn't going to be easy. Just as Emily was lost in her thoughts, her phone buzzed again. It was a text from her mom. "We're so proud of you, Emily. You've done it. Can't wait to see you at home for dinner." Emily stared at the message for a moment. Her heart ached. She knew what was expected of her. She would go home, smile, and tell her family everything was perfect. They would be happy, proud, and satisfied with what she had done. But in the quiet of her car, Emily couldn't help but wonder if she would ever truly be happy. Her mother had always pushed her toward success, but Emily had never been asked what success looked like for her. The engine hummed quietly as Emily sat, torn between the world she had always known and the one she wasn't sure she was ready to step into. She took a deep breath, wiped away a tear that had slipped down her cheek, and sent a quick reply to her mom, "I'll be there soon." But as she started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead, whatever it might be, was going to be the hardest one she'd ever traveled. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to start walking it. The drive home was silent, the only sound the low hum of the car's engine and the occasional rush of wind as she sped down the highway. Emily kept her hands gripped firmly on the wheel, her knuckles white. The weight of the last few hours of graduation, of everything she had done to get to this point, hung heavily on her chest. She could almost hear the voices of her parents in her head, her mom's excited praise, her dad's quiet nods of approval, but neither of them really seeing her. She wasn't sure what she had expected from herself today. She had gotten through the ceremony, smiled for the photos, given the obligatory hugs. Everyone around her had seemed so sure, so confident in the path they had ahead. But inside, she was lost. Was this it? Was this the dream she had been chasing all these years? The dream everyone had told her she was supposed to have? As Emily pulled into her driveway, the familiar sight of her family's house loomed before her. The two-story home, with its neat white exterior and flower-lined garden, had always been a symbol of security. It had been a place of comfort, a home where she knew the rules and expectations by heart. The door would open, and her mother would greet her with a big smile, asking how it went. Her father would give a brief nod of approval and return to whatever he had been doing, the silent acknowledgement that his daughter was on the right track. She parked in the driveway and turned off the engine. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at the house. A part of her wanted to just stay in the car, to keep driving and never look back. But she knew she couldn't do that. There were responsibilities, obligations, and she had been raised to fulfill them. With a deep breath, she stepped out of the car and made her way to the front door. Her mother was already waiting, her warm smile lighting up her face when she saw Emily approach. "Emily, you're home." Her mom pulled her into a tight hug, a little too tight, as though holding on to the last vestiges of her childhood. "How is everything? We're so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom," Emily murmured, trying to hide the discomfort she felt. She returned the hug, but her thoughts were far away. As they stepped inside, Emily's father glanced up from his book, a brief smile touching his lips. "Graduation went well?" he asked, his voice steady and calm, though it lacked the enthusiasm of her mother's. "It went fine," Emily replied, her voice sounding distant even to her own ears. She took a seat at the dinner table, trying to push away the thoughts swirling in her mind. She wasn't ready to have this conversation, not yet. Her mother quickly set the table, bustling around with plates and food, asking questions about the ceremony and what Emily's plans were for the summer. But as Emily sat there, it felt like the questions were just background noise. She couldn't bring herself to give the usual answers, the ones that everyone expected. She didn't know what her plans were. She didn't know anything anymore. "Have you thought about what you'll do next year?" her mom asked, setting a plate of lasagna in front of her. "Have you made a decision about college yet?" "I know you've got some great options, sweetheart." Emily swallowed hard. The question felt like a weight pressing down on her chest. Of course, she hadn't told her parents how unsure she was. They didn't know the inner conflict she had been feeling for months. Her mother had already mapped out the path for her: a good college, a solid degree, a future in something prestigious and safe. But none of that felt right to her. She couldn't imagine herself in that future. I'm not sure, Mom," Emily said quietly, her hands shaking slightly as she picked up her fork. "I think I need some time to figure it out." Her mother's smile faltered for just a moment, her eyes narrowing with concern. "What do you mean, not sure? Emily, you've worked so hard to get here. You can't just throw it all away now. College is the next step. You've earned it." Emily's heart raced. She knew her mom meant well, but the pressure was becoming unbearable. "I know, Mom. It's just, I don't know if it's the right step for me." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Her father looked up from his book, a small frown on his face, but he didn't say anything. Her mother blinked, taken aback by Emily's words. "What do you mean, honey?" her mother asked, her voice softening. "You've been talking about college for years. You've had your future planned out. What's changed?" Emily's stomach twisted. She couldn't tell her mother the truth, not in that moment, at least. How could she explain the sense of emptiness that had settled over her? How could she explain that she wasn't sure she wanted to follow the path everyone else had set for her? "I don't know, Mom," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper. "I just feel lost. Like I've been following everyone's plan for me, and now I don't even know what I want anymore. Her mother's face softened, but there was a flash of frustration in her eyes. Emily, we've talked about this. You've always been so focused, so driven. You're so capable. This is what you've worked for. I know, Mom, Emily said, her voice tinged with frustration. But what if it's not what I want? What if I'm not happy doing what everyone expects of me? Her mother was silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she sighed and set her fork down. I just want what's best for you, Emily. And I know that college will open doors for you. You have so much potential. Don't throw that away. Emily felt her chest tighten. The conversation felt like it was spiraling, like a conversation she had had 100 times before, but never like this. She wasn't sure how to make her mother understand. How could she explain that she didn't feel ready for what came next? That all the achievements, all the praise, all the plans, it all felt hollow to her now. I'm not throwing anything away, Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. I just need to figure out what I really want. I need to find my own way, Mom. Her mother didn't respond immediately. She looked at Emily for a long moment, her eyes filled with something disappointment, concern? Emily couldn't tell. Finally, her mother nodded, though her smile seemed forced. I hope you'll think about it carefully. We've always been proud of you, Emily. Just don't lose sight of what's important. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Emily didn't know what her mom truly thought. Maybe she would never fully understand. But in that moment, Emily knew one thing for sure. She was standing on the edge of a choice that would determine the rest of her life. And the road ahead would be anything but easy. As dinner continued, Emily's mind wandered back to the question that had been haunting her since the graduation ceremony. What do I really want? The weight of that question felt overwhelming, but somewhere deep down, Emily knew the answer wasn't something that could be found in a textbook, on a resume, or in someone else's dream for her. It was something only she could discover for herself. And with that realization, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the path ahead wasn't as clear as she had once thought, but it was hers to walk. The days after graduation were a blur. Emily spent most of her time wandering between a mixture of family dinners, congratulatory messages from friends, and the overwhelming pressure to make a decision about her future. She had always been the kind of person who liked to plan things, to know exactly what came next. But now she was faced with the uncomfortable reality of not knowing anything at all. Her mother's words still echoed in her mind. Just don't lose sight of what's important. What was important? Was it following the well-trodden path of college and a career, or was it something deeper, something more personal that she had been too afraid to acknowledge? The summer days dragged on, each one slipping by unnoticed as Emily tried to ignore the gnawing uncertainty that seemed to hang over her. Every time her phone buzzed with another congratulatory message or her mother asked if she had decided which college to attend, Emily would put on a smile, shrug, and say she was still figuring it out. But in her heart, she knew she couldn't keep pretending. The pressure was becoming unbearable. One particularly hot afternoon, Emily went for a walk around her neighborhood. The sun beat down on her, but she didn't mind. The heat was a distraction, something to focus on instead of the churning thoughts in her head. She walked past the familiar houses, the ones she had seen 1,000 times before, but today they felt different. Every house seemed to have a story, a purpose, while her own home seemed to be a place of quiet expectation, of silent demands she could no longer ignore. She walked without a destination, her feet taking her to the park at the edge of town. It was the park she and Ethan used to play in when they were younger. The swings were still there, creaking softly in the breeze, and the basketball court had a few people shooting hoops. Emily found a bench under a large oak tree and sat down, letting the cool shade wash over her. It was there, on that old bench, that Emily had her first real moment of clarity in weeks. She stared out at the open space before her, the green of the grass, the distant sounds of children playing, the way the sun filtered through the trees, and for the first time, she felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from completing an assignment or meeting expectations. It was a different kind of peace, one that came from being present, from allowing herself to be just her, without the weight of others' expectations bearing down on her. That's when it hit her. Maybe I don't have to have it all figured out right now. She had been so focused on the future, on doing what was expected, that she had forgotten how to listen to herself. She had forgotten that it was okay to be uncertain, that it was okay to take a step back and breathe. For the first time in a long time, Emily let go of the pressure she had been holding onto. She didn't need to have all the answers today. The world wasn't going to end if she took some time to figure out what she truly wanted. The sound of a car pulling into the parking lot broke her out of her thoughts. Emily turned her head to see a familiar face approaching. It was Kate, her best friend from high school. "Hey, Emily," Kate called, waving as she jogged up to the bench. "I thought I might find you here. You look like you've been deep in thought." Emily smiled as Kate sat down beside her. "Yeah, I guess I've just been trying to sort things out in my head." Kate raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay? You've been kind of MIA since graduation." Emily hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice soft. "I don't know, Kate. I feel like everyone has their future all figured out, and I don't even know what I want anymore." Kate's expression softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on Emily's arm. "I get it," she said. "Everyone keeps asking me what I'm doing after graduation, and I have no idea. But you know what? It's okay to not know. You don't have to have everything planned out." "I just feel like I'm supposed to have it all figured out by now," Emily admitted. "I've always been the responsible one, the one with the plan. But now, I'm not sure I even want the plan I've been following." Kate nodded. "I get it. I've been feeling the same way. My parents have been pushing me to go to college, but I don't know if that's what I want either. I want to travel, take some time to figure things out. But I'm scared to tell them that." Emily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone in this. Kate had always been the wild one, the one who didn't follow all the rules, but hearing that Kate didn't have everything figured out either gave Emily a sense of permission. Maybe it was okay to not know what came next. Maybe it was okay to take a detour, to find her own way. "You know," Kate said thoughtfully, "I was reading this article the other day, and it said that it's totally fine to take a gap year or follow a path that's different from everyone else's. Some of the most successful people didn't go straight to college or follow the typical route. It's about finding your own pace, your own journey." Emily smiled at her friend. "That sounds nice. But it's hard when everyone around me is so sure of their future." Kate grinned. "Yeah, but they don't know what's going on in your head. What's important is what feels right for you." The words settled in Emily's mind like a seed, slowly starting to grow. Maybe Kate was right. Maybe she didn't have to conform to the expectations of her parents, her teachers, or society. She could take her own time, follow her own path. There was no rush. There was no rulebook that said she had to have everything figured out by the end of the summer. As the conversation continued, Emily found herself laughing more than she had in weeks. It was a genuine laugh, the kind that came from the freedom of letting go of everything she thought she had to be. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she was allowed to breathe, to just exist. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Kate stood up, stretching her arms above her head. "Well, I'm going to grab a smoothie. Want to join me?" Emily stood as well, feeling lighter than she had in days. "Sure, why not?" As they walked toward the parking lot, Emily felt a flicker of excitement in her chest. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew that was okay. The journey ahead wasn't going to be easy, but it was hers to make. And that thought filled her with a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. As she climbed into Kate's car and they drove off toward the smoothie shop, Emily allowed herself to smile. She was taking the first step toward finding her own way, and that was enough for now. The next few weeks passed in a haze of uncertainty and quiet moments of realization. Emily was still working through the nagging questions that clung to her like shadows, but each day felt like a little more progress. She spent her time exploring different options, attending open houses for local colleges, reading about travel programs, and even looking at internships in fields she had never considered before. The more she explored, the more she realized just how vast her options were, and the more she began to question everything she had been told was the right path. Yet despite all her research, Emily still felt like she was standing on the edge of something, unsure of how to step forward. It was one evening, while sitting at the kitchen table with her parents, that the next chapter of her journey began to unfold. Her mom had prepared dinner, her favorite lasagna, and it felt like an unspoken tradition for the family to sit down together, even after Emily's high school graduation. Tonight, however, there was something different in the air. "So, have you made a decision yet?" her mom asked, cutting into her lasagna with practiced precision. Emily had braced herself for this question. It was one she had been avoiding for weeks. She put down her fork, taking a deep breath before responding. "Not yet, Mom," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "I'm still thinking about it." Her mother paused, her fork hovering just above her plate. She set it down carefully, wiping her mouth with her napkin before speaking again. "Emily, this isn't something to take lightly. College is the next step. It's the foundation for everything that comes after. We've talked about this. I know you've worked hard to get here, and I just don't want you to waste that opportunity." Emily could feel the familiar knot forming in her stomach. The weight of her mother's expectations was heavy, and it seemed to hang in the air between them, pushing her to make a decision she wasn't ready for. "I know, Mom," she said, her voice quieter now. "But I don't feel ready for it. I'm not sure it's what I want." Her mother's eyebrows furrowed, the slightest hint of frustration in her gaze. "What do you mean, Emily? College is what you've always wanted. It's what we have always wanted for you." Emily clenched her fists under the table. She knew this conversation was coming, but she hadn't expected it to be so difficult. The walls felt like they were closing in on her. I don't feel like I'm ready for that life. What if it's not for me? What if I want to try something else, something different?" Emily's voice was trembling now, her emotions rising to the surface. Her mother's face softened, but her tone was still firm. "What do you want to do then? Just quit everything and wander? You can't just throw away all that work for some what-if scenario." "I'm not throwing it away," Emily said, trying to stay calm. "But maybe there's another path. Maybe I need to take a break, travel, or do something I've always wanted to do. I can't just go to college because it's what's expected of me." Her mother was silent for a long moment. The tension in the room thickened as her parents exchanged glances. Her father, who had been quiet the entire time, finally spoke up, his voice steady but calm. "Emily," he said slowly, "I understand that you're confused. But there's a reason we're encouraging you to go to college. It's not just about us or what we want. It's about your future, about setting yourself up for success. There's nothing wrong with taking a break, but you need to be sure about what you're doing." Emily felt like her chest was tightening. She wanted so badly to explain, to make her parents understand that she wasn't running away from something, but that she was running toward something, toward a life that was her own, not one dictated by the rules of society or by her parents' expectations. "I'm not sure college is the right step for me right now," Emily whispered. "Maybe I need to figure out what I truly want before I make any decisions about my future." Her mother looked at her with concern, but there was also a flicker of disappointment in her eyes. "We just want the best for you, Emily. You don't have to have it all figured out today, but you can't just keep avoiding the question forever. We've already put in so much effort, and it's important to keep moving forward." Emily wanted to say something, to tell her that she didn't want to keep going in a direction that wasn't hers. But the words caught in her throat. She knew how much her parents had sacrificed for her to be in this position. and that made it harder to disappoint them. "I'll think about it," she said finally, pushing her food around her plate. I need some time." Her mom sighed, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the conversation had taken something from her. "Okay, Emily. Take the time you need. But please don't make this decision lightly." As the conversation shifted to more neutral topics, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed a line. It wasn't a line that had been drawn in ink, but a line that had been etched over years of family expectations, of quiet hopes for her future. Now, she was on the other side of that line, and it was scary. That night, after dinner, Emily retreated to her room. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the familiar surroundings, the posters of her favorite bands, the trophies from high school events, the stack of textbooks she had never opened. Everything felt both familiar and foreign at the same time. The pressure to make the right decision felt suffocating. But in the midst of it all, she kept hearing Kate's voice in her mind. "You don't have to have everything figured out." It was a small comfort, a reminder that she wasn't alone in feeling uncertain. She took out her phone and scrolled through her messages. One from Kate caught her eye. It simply read, "I'm going to take a trip this summer. Just me, a backpack, and the open road. What do you think?" Emily smiled softly to herself. The idea of taking a break, of just being somewhere else, appealed to her more than anything else. She needed space. Space to breathe, to think, and to figure out what she truly wanted. Maybe Kate was onto something. Maybe it was time for Emily to take that first step into the unknown. She typed a quick response. "That sounds amazing. I might just join you." And for the first time in weeks, Emily felt a flicker of excitement, an excitement that wasn't fueled by someone else's dream for her. It was the excitement of creating her own path. The decision had been made. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Emily felt a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in months. The weight that had been hanging over her shoulders began to lift as she made arrangements for her summer trip. She had spent hours researching backpacking routes, travel blogs, and local sites, each new discovery sparking more excitement than the last. This was going to be her journey, her chance to experience life on her own terms. It wasn't just about running away from her family's expectations or avoiding the pressure to conform. It was about finding out who she really was when she wasn't following a script. It was about discovering the parts of herself that had been hidden beneath the expectations of others for so long. The day before she was set to leave, Emily sat in her room, carefully packing her backpack. It wasn't a lot, just the essentials. A few changes of clothes, a journal, her camera, and a guidebook she had bought on a whim. She didn't want to overpack. After all, it was the adventure that mattered, not the things she carried with her. She thought about her past, about everything that had led her to this point. High school, graduation, the pressure to choose a path. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. A message from Kate. "Ready for tomorrow? I'm thinking we start the trip with a hike. There's a trail I've always wanted to try." Emily smiled and quickly typed back, "Let's do it. I need some time in the outdoors before we head out. See you in the morning." After packing, she sat on her bed for a while, just staring at the packed bag beside her. She felt both nervous and excited. It wasn't easy to walk away from everything she knew, her family, her friends, and the comfort of the familiar. But there was a part of her that felt like this was what she needed. This trip wasn't about escaping. It was about finding her footing in the world and seeing where it would take her. The next morning, Emily woke up early, her heart racing with anticipation. She dressed in comfortable clothes, threw on her sneakers, and grabbed her bag. As she made her way downstairs, the familiar smell of coffee greeted her. Her mom was in the kitchen, sipping a cup of coffee with a distant look on her face. "Hey, Mom," Emily said softly, her voice tentative. Her mom turned, offering a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hi, Emily. Are you all packed?" "Yeah," Emily said, nodding. I'm about to head out. Kate and I are starting our trip today. Her mother paused for a moment, then sighed. I know this is hard for you, but I just want you to know that I love you, and I want you to make good choices. Emily's throat tightened, but she forced herself to keep calm. I know, Mom. I'll be careful. I need to do this. For me. Her mom studied her for a moment, as if weighing her words. I hope you find what you're looking for, Emily. Just remember that no matter where you go, we're here for you. Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Thanks, Mom. I'll call when I can. With that, she grabbed her backpack and headed out the door, her heart pounding. As she slid into the passenger seat of Kate's car, she felt a wave of nervousness, but also excitement. You ready for this? Kate asked, a grin on her face as she revved the engine. I think so, Emily replied, her voice a little shaky. It's just a lot to leave behind. I get it, Kate said, her tone softening. But this is about you. You've been stuck in that box for so long, doing what everyone else expects of you. Now, it's time for you to live your life for you. Emily smiled, the words comforting her more than she expected. She knew Kate was right. This wasn't about running away from her family or her responsibilities. It was about giving herself the freedom to explore the world, to be who she was without the pressure of everyone else's dreams for her. The drive was long, but the conversation flowed easily between them. Kate talked about the places she had always wanted to see, while Emily shared her hopes and fears for the future. The more they talked, the more Emily realized how much she had missed these kinds of conversations, honest, open, and free from judgment. They arrived at the trailhead just as the sun began to rise, casting a golden light over the mountains. The air was cool, the forest quiet except for the sound of birds and the rustling of leaves. The trail ahead of them stretched into the trees, winding around rocks and streams. Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of peace as they began their hike. The climb was challenging, but with each step, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment. She had always been the type to stay within the lines, to avoid anything that might feel too risky or uncertain. But here, in the quiet wilderness, she felt a freedom she hadn't known before. There were no expectations, no deadlines, just the beauty of the world around her and the feeling of her own breath in her chest. As they reached the top of the trail, they found a large rock to sit on, looking out over the vast expanse of trees below. Emily let out a deep breath, feeling a sense of gratitude for this moment. This was what she had been looking for. This is incredible, Emily said, her voice filled with awe. I feel like I can breathe up here. Kate smiled, her eyes sparkling with the same sense of adventure. This is just the beginning, Em. The world's waiting for us. And this is only the start of your journey. Emily nodded, a newfound sense of clarity filling her chest. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. She was taking this journey one step at a time, and that was all she needed to know. I'm ready for whatever comes next, Emily said softly, more to herself than to Kate. The words felt like a promise, a commitment to her own growth and the unknown path ahead. And with that, as the sun continued to rise over the horizon, Emily knew her adventure had truly begun. As the days passed, Emily and Kate's journey unfolded like the pages of a storybook, each chapter filled with new experiences, challenges, and moments of joy. They traveled from one small town to the next, each place offering its own unique charm. From hiking in the mountains to camping under the stars, Emily felt the weight of her past life slowly lifting. It wasn't that she was running away from her problems, she was learning to live in a way that felt authentic to her. The more Emily immersed herself in the freedom of the open road, the more she realized just how much she had been constricted by the expectations of others. Her parents, her teachers, even her friends, everyone had always told her what the right thing to do was. But now she was living on her own terms, and it felt exhilarating. One afternoon, after a long hike through a dense forest, they arrived at a remote lakeside town known only to a few locals and backpackers. It was quiet, tucked away from the busyness of the world, and that's exactly what Emily needed. The lake was still and serene, reflecting the blue sky above. Emily sat on the shore, dipping her toes into the cool water while Kate wandered off to take pictures of the scenery. The moment felt perfect, peaceful, untouched, and filled with possibility. "I think I could live here," Emily said softly, breaking the silence. Kate, who had been lost in her own thoughts, turned and raised an eyebrow. "Really? You could live in a place like this? It's so isolated." Emily shrugged, her gaze fixed on the still water. "I don't know. There's something about it. Everything here is so simple. No pressure, no expectations. Just life as it is." Kate sat down beside her, her face thoughtful. "I get it. There's something about getting away from everything that helps you find yourself. But you can't stay here forever, right?" Emily hesitated, feeling the weight of the question. Could she stay in a place like this forever? Could she walk away from everything she knew, everything that had been planned for her, and start anew in a place like this? She shook her head slowly. "No, I know I can't. But I think this is the kind of place I need right now. It's not about running away. It's about finding the quiet to listen to myself, to figure out what I want without the noise of the world telling me what I should do." Kate nodded, and for the first time, Emily could see the deep understanding in her friend's eyes. It was a rare thing to find someone who truly understood what she was going through, and in that moment, she felt a bond between them that was deeper than friendship. It was a shared journey, a shared search for meaning and direction. The next day, they decided to explore the town more thoroughly. They wandered through the small streets, stopping in a local cafe for coffee and chatting with the friendly townsfolk. Everyone seemed to know each other, and there was an undeniable warmth to the place. It was a sharp contrast to the fast-paced, impersonal nature of the city life Emily had known. It felt like a place where time slowed down, where it was okay to pause and breathe. As they were leaving the cafe, they met an older woman who had been sitting alone at a corner table, reading a book. She smiled at them as they walked past, her eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Are you two travelers?" she asked, her voice friendly but inquisitive. "Yeah," Kate said, returning the smile. "We're just passing through." "Ah," the woman said, her smile widening. "Well, there's always room for travelers here. The world is wide, but sometimes it's the small places that hold the biggest lessons. You might not realize it now, but you'll leave here changed." Emily and Kate exchanged a look. The woman's words felt like a quiet truth, one that settled deep into Emily's heart. She had come on this trip seeking something, though she hadn't known exactly what it was. But now, standing in this small town, she realized that maybe the journey wasn't just about finding a new place. It was about discovering the parts of herself she had lost along the way. The woman continued, "Take it from me, sometimes the road less traveled is the one that leads you home. And sometimes it's about being okay with not knowing where home is just yet." Her words lingered in the air, and Emily found herself reflecting on them as they left the cafe. Could this small town be the place she had been searching for? Or was it simply a pause on a much longer journey? She didn't know yet. But she was beginning to understand that it wasn't about the destination. It was about the journey itself, and the lessons she was learning along the way. For the next few days, Emily and Kate spent their time hiking, fishing, and exploring the natural beauty of the area. But in the evenings, they would return to the lakeside, sitting together on the shore, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and orange. Each night, Emily felt herself becoming more grounded, more sure of the direction she was heading in, even if that direction was still unclear. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars, Emily turned to Kate and said, "I've been thinking a lot about what that woman said. About the road less traveled. It makes me wonder if I've been following the wrong path all along." Kate raised an eyebrow, her gaze thoughtful. "What do you mean?" I mean, Emily said slowly, for so long, I've been trying to follow the path everyone else has laid out for me. College, a career, the whole package. But I don't think that's what I want anymore. I don't know what I want yet, but I know I need to take time to figure it out. I don't want to live my life for other people's expectations. Kate smiled, the kind of smile that was filled with understanding. I think you're on the right track, Em. The road less traveled might be a little more difficult, but it's the one that's truly yours. It's the one that will lead you to where you're meant to be. Emily nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't worried about the future. She didn't need to have it all figured out. The answers would come when the time was right. As the days turned into weeks, Emily and Kate continued their journey, each new day bringing new opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Emily realized that it wasn't the destinations that mattered. It was the lessons learned along the way, the people she met, and the quiet moments of reflection that helped her understand who she truly was. And as they drove away from the lakeside town, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the journey she had begun. She was no longer the girl who had been bound by expectations. She was someone new, someone who was learning to walk her own path, no matter how uncertain it might be. With each mile they traveled, Emily felt a little more like herself. And she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. The further Emily traveled, the more she began to notice a subtle shift in her thoughts and feelings. Each town, each encounter, each quiet moment of solitude seemed to bring her closer to a truth she had been avoiding for years. The life she had been living, the one that had been laid out for her, no longer felt like her own. It was a hard realization. For so long, Emily had been so caught up in the expectations of others, her parents, her friends, her teachers, that she had forgotten to ask herself what she truly wanted. Now, on this journey, far from the pressures of home, she felt the weight of that question looming over her. She sat quietly one evening by the campfire, the fire crackling and popping, the warmth of the flames contrasting with the cool evening air. Kate was roasting marshmallows on a stick, her laughter ringing out into the night, but Emily found herself lost in thought, staring into the dancing flames. "You okay?" Kate asked, her voice soft. "You've been quiet tonight." Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I've been thinking a lot. About everything." Kate sat down beside her, a marshmallow still on the end of her stick. "You've got that look on your face. What's going on in that head of yours?" Emily shifted, looking out over the darkened wilderness. The only sounds were the distant rustling of leaves and the soft chirping of crickets. She felt like everything around her was still, waiting for her to speak. "I just don't know what I'm doing anymore. I mean, yeah, I'm on this trip. I'm doing what I've always dreamed of, traveling and figuring things out. But what if I don't know who I really am?" Kate paused, chewing on the marshmallow before she spoke. "That's a big question, Em. But I think you're already on the right track. You're asking yourself that question, which is more than most people do. And trust me, there's no timeline for figuring it out. The answer isn't going to come all at once." Emily nodded, grateful for Kate's calming presence. "I guess I'm just scared. Scared that I'll never figure it out. Scared that I'll go back home and just fall into the same patterns. I mean, what if this trip doesn't change anything? What if I just go back to the way things were?" Kate looked at her thoughtfully. "I get it. But you're already different, Em. You've changed, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. And no matter what happens when you go back, you won't be the same person who left. You can't be. You've experienced too much, you've learned too much. Change doesn't always have to be dramatic. Sometimes, it's just in the small moments, in the choices you make every day." Emily stared at the fire, the flames casting flickering shadows across her face. Kate's words stuck with her. Change didn't have to be big. It could be small, almost imperceptible, like the way she'd begun to trust herself more. The way she'd learned to listen to the quiet voice inside her that had been drowned out for so long. She exhaled slowly, feeling a little lighter. You're right. I've spent so much of my life trying to live up to someone else's expectations. Maybe now it's time to start living up to my own. Kate smiled. Exactly. And who knows? Maybe this trip will be the start of something new. Maybe it won't. But that's okay. You don't have to have it all figured out right now. You're allowed to take your time. Emily let the silence settle around them for a moment, the weight of Kate's words wrapping around her like a warm blanket. For the first time in weeks, she felt a sense of peace. Not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because she was beginning to understand that it didn't need to be. The journey itself was what mattered. The next day, they packed up their camp and set out on the road again. Emily's mind felt clearer than it had in days. She didn't know where this journey was going, but for the first time, she didn't feel the need to rush to find out. She was content to let the path unfold, step by step, knowing that it would lead her somewhere important. As they drove through the small towns, the open road stretching out in front of them, Emily began to realize something else. There was still a part of her that longed to know where she was going, but there was also a part of her that embraced the uncertainty. After all, hadn't this trip been about finding freedom? And wasn't freedom, in its truest form, about letting go of the need for control? They pulled into another small town, this one even quieter than the last. Emily looked out the window at the empty streets, the small shops closed for the day, and the old, weathered buildings. The town felt like it had been forgotten by time, a place where people came to disappear or to be left alone. Kate pulled the car over to the side of the road and parked. What do you think? Want to explore this place? Emily nodded, feeling the pull of curiosity. Yeah, let's see what's here. They spent the afternoon walking through the town, peering into antique shops and talking to the locals. Everyone seemed friendly enough, though they had the air of people who had been here for a long time and didn't have much interest in leaving. It felt like a place frozen in time, a place where you could come to escape, to find peace. As they wandered down a narrow street, they came upon an old church at the end of a small, quiet square. Emily couldn't explain why, but something about the church called to her. She motioned for Kate to follow, and the two of them made their way toward the entrance. Inside, the church was dimly lit, the air cool and musty. The walls were lined with old stained glass windows, their colors muted by the dust of age. The pews were empty, and the only sound was the soft echo of their footsteps. Emily walked down the aisle, her footsteps slow and deliberate. She sat in one of the pews, her hands folded in her lap. There was something calming about the stillness of the church, the way the world outside seemed to fade away. In this moment, she felt a deep sense of solitude, not loneliness, but a peaceful kind of solitude. Kate sat down beside her, breaking the silence. What's on your mind, Em? Emily closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. I think I'm starting to understand what I need to do. Not everything, not right away. But I'm getting there. Kate nodded, her eyes gentle. You'll find your way, Em. You've already taken the hardest step by being brave enough to ask the questions. Emily smiled softly, feeling a quiet strength within herself that hadn't been there before. Maybe the answers wouldn't come all at once. Maybe the road ahead would still be uncertain. But for the first time, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. And as she sat there, in the quiet sanctuary of the old church, she realized that she was okay with not having it all figured out. She was okay with being at a crossroads because, for the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next few days passed in a blur, each one marked by a new discovery, a new realization, and moments of quiet reflection. Emily and Kate continued to explore, but the pace had slowed. No longer was it about rushing to see the next place or checking off a list of things to do. It was about savoring each moment, about being present in the stillness of the journey, and listening to the quiet voice inside Emily that had been drowned out for so long. They stopped in a small town known for its old-world charm. The streets were lined with cobblestone, and the buildings seemed to lean on each other as if holding hands against the winds of time. Emily found herself drawn to the slower pace of life here, to the quiet hum of small-town existence. Kate, always the adventurer, was eager to explore every inch of the place. But Emily, for the first time, felt a deep sense of stillness within herself. She wasn't interested in rushing through the town, ticking off tourist spots. Instead, she wandered down the narrow alleyways, letting her feet carry her where they would. She felt the cool breeze against her skin, the sunlight warming her face, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. As she walked, her mind returned to the conversation she had had with Kate by the campfire. What if I really am starting to find myself? She thought. What if the changes I've been searching for aren't as dramatic as I imagined, but just small, subtle shifts inside me? It was then that Emily realized something profound. She had been looking for something outside of herself for so long: answers, direction, meaning. But maybe everything she had been seeking was already inside her. She had the strength to carve her own path, to make her own choices, and to take control of her life. All it took was stepping away from the noise, away from everyone else's expectations, and giving herself the space to listen to her own heart. Kate caught up with her a few moments later, her arms full of postcards and trinkets. "You've been quiet today," Kate said, noticing the contemplative look on Emily's face. "Everything okay?" Emily smiled, turning to face her. "Yeah, I think I've just been thinking, about everything. About the trip, about the future." Kate raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like serious thinking. What's going on?" Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the realization settle over her. I think I'm starting to understand what I need to do. What I've been searching for this whole time." Kate's expression softened, and she gave Emily a gentle smile. "And what is it?" Emily hesitated, unsure how to put the feeling into words. "I've been looking for answers everywhere, thinking that some big revelation would hit me and I'd suddenly know what to do with my life. But the truth is, it's not about waiting for a moment of clarity. It's about trusting myself. It's about listening to what I already know deep down, even if it's not all clear yet." Kate's eyes sparkled with understanding. "I get it. It's about trusting yourself enough to move forward, even when you don't have all the answers." "That's huge, Em." Emily nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "Yeah, I think it's time for me to stop trying to live up to everyone else's expectations. I need to start living for myself, to make choices based on what I feel is right for me, not what others think is best." Kate placed a hand on Emily's shoulder. "You're already doing that, Em. This trip, this journey, it's all about finding your own path. You're already living for yourself, and that's something to be proud of." Emily felt a surge of gratitude toward Kate. She had been her constant companion, her sounding board, and her anchor throughout this entire journey. And in this moment, she realized how lucky she was to have someone like Kate by her side. They sat down at a nearby bench, and the two friends talked for hours, sharing their hopes, their dreams, and the uncertainty that still lingered in their hearts. It was a conversation full of vulnerability, of shared understanding, and of the deep, unspoken bond that had grown between them over the past few weeks. As the sun began to set, casting the town in a warm, golden glow, Emily realized that this was the moment she had been waiting for. Not some grand epiphany, but a quiet realization that she was exactly where she needed to be, right here, in this moment, with her best friend by her side, listening to her heart and finding her way one step at a time. The next morning, as they prepared to leave the town and continue their journey, Emily felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of what might come. She knew that no matter where the journey took her, she would be okay. She would trust herself, trust the process, and allow the road to unfold in its own time. They packed up the car and said their goodbyes to the sleepy town, heading out on the road once more. The world stretched out before them, full of possibilities and unknowns, but Emily felt ready. Ready to face whatever came next, ready to embrace the uncertainty, and most importantly, ready to trust that the answers would come when the time was right. As they drove on, the sun rising in front of them, Emily glanced over at Kate, who was humming to the music playing softly on the radio. The road stretched out, winding through the mountains and across open fields. The landscape seemed to mirror Emily's heart, vast, open, and filled with potential. "I think this is it," Emily said quietly, almost to herself. "I think I've finally started to let go of the past, to let go of the things that held me back." Kate looked over at her, a knowing smile on her face. "You're getting there, Em. You're really starting to see it now, aren't you?" Emily nodded. "Yeah, I am." It's not about having all the answers. It's about being okay with the unknown and trusting that, eventually, I'll figure it out. As they drove on, Emily felt a sense of freedom wash over her, the weight of her old life slowly fading away. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she was excited to find out. And that was enough. It wasn't until they reached the small town of Rosewood that Emily truly felt the full weight of everything she'd learned so far. As she and Kate drove down the tree-lined streets, the town felt familiar in a way that left her both comforted and unsettled. It was a picture-perfect place, with little cafes lining the sidewalks, children running through the park, and the kind of community where everyone seemed to know each other. They parked the car by the town square, where a large, ancient oak tree stretched out its limbs like a protector over the area. Emily couldn't help but think that this was a place people came to when they needed to find peace, but something inside her told her that Rosewood had something else in store for her, a challenge, maybe, or an unexpected connection she hadn't been anticipating. "Want to grab a coffee?" Kate asked as she pulled a pair of sunglasses over her eyes, always ready for an adventure. Emily smiled but hesitated. "Actually, I think I might just walk around. I want to get a feel for the place before we settle in." "Fair enough," Kate said with a wink. "I'll be at that cafe if you need me." As Kate headed into the nearby cafe, Emily slowly wandered down the street, letting her feet guide her. The warm autumn sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the sidewalks. Rosewood had an old-world charm, but it also felt like something was bubbling just beneath the surface, a secret waiting to be discovered. She was halfway down the block when she noticed an old brick building tucked between a modern bookstore and a florist shop. The sign above the door read, "Rosewood Historical Society." Curiosity piqued, Emily stepped toward it, pushing the door open and stepping inside. The air smelled faintly of old paper and wood polish. The space was lined with dusty shelves and photographs from decades ago. Emily couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of nostalgia as she wandered through the collection. Everything in here seemed to tell a story, some forgotten and others perhaps too well remembered. At the back of the room, a man was sorting through a stack of papers. He had graying hair, glasses perched on the tip of his nose, and a slight stoop as though the weight of history itself was pressing down on his shoulders. He looked up as Emily entered. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice warm and inviting. Emily hesitated, not sure what to say. "I was just exploring the town and happened upon this place. It looks interesting." He smiled and set the papers aside. "Rosewood has a history like no other. There are some fascinating stories about this town, some you won't find in your usual history books." "Really?" Emily's curiosity was piqued. "What kind of stories?" The man leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "Well, there's a lot about the early settlers, but there's also a legend. Some people around here still believe it's true. About a treasure buried somewhere in the town. Not just any treasure, mind you, but one that's been passed down through generations. Some think it's just a story, but others, well, they're still looking for it." Emily's heart raced. She had spent the past few weeks on a journey of self-discovery, but now her sense of adventure was reigniting. A treasure? It felt like something straight out of a novel, and for a split second, she wondered if this was part of her own story. Something unexpected but destined to shape her path. That sounds fascinating, Emily said, her mind already buzzing with the possibilities. Have people tried to find it? The man nodded gravely. Oh, yes. But the truth is, no one knows where it's hidden. It's said to be tied to the town's founding, a secret kept from the public for centuries. Some say it's buried under the oak tree in the town square, while others think it's hidden somewhere within the old church. No one's ever found it, though. At least, not in living memory. Emily felt a thrill run through her. How do you know it's real? I mean, there's no actual proof, right? There's always some proof, he replied cryptically. But it's not something you'd find in a book. It's more like a feeling, a sense that it's out there, waiting for the right person to uncover it. Who knows? Maybe you'll be the one to find it. Emily wasn't sure if the man was teasing her or if he truly believed in the legend. Either way, it felt like a spark had been lit inside her. This was the kind of adventure she had been searching for, a real-life mystery, a chance to uncover something hidden, something that could change everything. I don't know, she said, her voice light. But it's certainly intriguing. The man smiled. Sometimes, the best adventures begin when you least expect them. If you're serious about learning more, come by again tomorrow. I'll show you the maps. Who knows? You might just find a clue that could lead you to the treasure. Emily nodded, a grin spreading across her face. I'll think about it. Thanks for the tip. As she turned to leave, the man called out to her, remember, sometimes the treasure you're looking for isn't always gold or jewels. Sometimes it's something deeper, something more valuable. Emily paused at the door, his words echoing in her mind. Thanks, she said quietly before stepping back out into the bright daylight. As she made her way back to the cafe to meet Kate, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to unfold. Maybe the treasure was real, maybe it wasn't. But she felt like this town had just opened a door to a new chapter in her journey, one that could change everything. When she reached the cafe, Kate was sitting at a table near the window, sipping on an iced latte. She waved Emily over enthusiastically. So, what's the verdict? You find anything interesting? Emily slid into the chair across from her. You could say that. Kate raised an eyebrow. What happened? Did you stumble upon some hidden gem? Emily smiled mysteriously. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me, Kate said, leaning in, her curiosity piqued. Emily leaned back in her chair, a grin playing on her lips. Let's just say I might have just found my next adventure. The kind that could change everything. Kate looked at her with wide eyes. What are you talking about? Emily didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked out the window at the peaceful town of Rosewood, feeling an unfamiliar sense of anticipation. It was as if something was calling to her, something bigger than herself, something she had been waiting for without even knowing it. And she was ready for it. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Emily knew that whatever was waiting for her here in Rosewood, whether it was a treasure, a hidden truth, or simply an answer to the questions she had been asking, was going to be a turning point in her life. She wasn't just passing through anymore. She was here for something. And whatever that something was, it was about to change the course of her journey forever. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The next morning, Emily woke up early, her mind buzzing with possibilities. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about the conversation she had with the man at the Historical Society. The idea of a treasure hidden in Rosewood felt like something straight out of a storybook, but something about it felt real, almost as if it were calling to her. She had gone to bed with the firm intention of not getting too caught up in it. After all, she was supposed to be on this trip to find herself, not chase after myths and legends. But the more she thought about it, the more intrigued she became. What if the treasure wasn't just about gold or riches? What if it was about uncovering something more, something that would help her unlock the answers she'd been searching for? She grabbed her bag and walked toward the historical society, feeling a new kind of energy surging through her. This wasn't just an adventure, it was something she needed to do. As much as she'd been searching for peace, for meaning, she knew that part of her journey would involve following where her curiosity led her. And today, it was leading her straight to a treasure map. When she arrived, the man was waiting for her, as if he'd been expecting her. His expression softened when he saw her. "I figured you'd be back," he said with a knowing smile. "Most people who hear about the treasure don't just walk away. Something about it sticks with them." "I guess I'm one of those people," Emily replied, her voice tinged with excitement. He led her into a back room where the faint smell of old books and parchment hung in the air. He gestured for her to sit at a small wooden table covered in maps and yellowing documents. "I've been researching the town's history for years." "It's all here," he said, pointing to the stack of papers. Emily's heart raced as she leaned forward, her eyes scanning the ancient-looking documents. Among the maps, one stood out, a hand-drawn chart of the town, dating back to the 1800s. It was filled with cryptic symbols and annotations that made little sense to her. At the top, it read, "The Hidden Heart of Rosewood." "Do you think this is real?" Emily asked, tracing the map with her finger. "I mean, this could be just a joke, right?" The man shook his head. "It's not a joke, but it's also not something that can be easily understood. The clues have been passed down through generations. Some of them are encoded, others are more abstract. But one thing is certain, the treasure is tied to something that runs deep within the town's roots." Emily leaned in closer, trying to make sense of the marks on the map. "So, what's the first step?" The man smiled slightly, as if he had been waiting for her to ask. "Well, that's the fun part. You have to follow the clues. But you have to be careful. The treasure is hidden in layers, physical layers, historical layers, and even emotional layers. It's as much about the journey as it is about the destination." Emily stared at the map, her mind racing. The treasure wasn't just about finding something tangible. It was about uncovering the secrets of the town and, in some way, the secrets of her own heart. She had been on a journey of self-discovery, but now it felt like the town was offering her a chance to dig deeper, to uncover things about herself she hadn't even realized she was searching for. "Are you ready for this?" the man asked, snapping her out of her thoughts. She looked up at him, her heart beating faster. "I don't know, but I think I need to be." He handed her the map. "Then follow the first clue. It will lead you to where the Real journey begins." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the map in her hands. The first clue was scrawled in the corner of the map, where the roots of the past intertwine with the branches of the future. "What does that even mean?" Emily muttered to herself. The man chuckled softly. "You'll figure it out. But remember, sometimes the treasure is hidden in plain sight. You just have to learn how to see it." With the map in hand, Emily stepped out of the historical society and into the bright morning sunlight. The air was crisp, and the town seemed even more alive than it had the day before. As she walked down the street, the clue seemed to float in her mind, elusive but persistent. Where the roots of the past intertwine with the branches of the future. She wandered through the town square, trying to make sense of the words. The oak tree stood in the center, towering over the square like a giant, its branches reaching out like arms welcoming the world. The tree's roots were visible, gnarled and twisted, wrapping around the base like the very bones of the earth. Emily stood in front of it, staring at the ancient tree, her mind racing. "Where the roots of the past," she murmured, gazing up at the branches above her. The words began to click in her mind. The oak tree had stood in the square for centuries. It was a symbol of the past, the history of the town. But the branches reaching into the sky represented something new, something growing. The past and the future intertwined. She looked closer at the base of the tree. There, partially obscured by the roots, was a small stone plaque. She crouched down to get a better look, brushing away the leaves and dirt. The plaque had an inscription on it, worn and faded, but still legible. To those who seek, the past is always present. The future will reveal itself in time. Emily's heart skipped a beat. The past and the future. The roots and the branches. She stood up slowly, a shiver running down her spine. The plaque was part of the clue. The treasure wasn't just in the town, it was in its very history. And the path to it wasn't going to be simple. It was going to require patience, observation, and perhaps a willingness to see the town in a new light. She knew that this was only the beginning. But it was a beginning she was ready for. Turning back toward the historical society, Emily couldn't help but smile. This town, this journey, it was everything she had been searching for. She was no longer just an outsider passing through. Rosewood had drawn her in, and now it felt like she was part of its story, part of the treasure hunt that was unfolding before her. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Emily felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The journey had begun. The next few days felt like a blur of discovery, each clue pulling Emily deeper into the heart of Rosewood's mystery. The more she learned about the treasure, the more she felt a connection to the town's history, as though the very fabric of her being was tied to the story of Rosewood. It was as if everything in her life had led to this moment, to this place. She spent the following morning retracing her steps around the oak tree. The plaque, still fresh in her mind, had been her starting point, but she knew it was only the tip of the iceberg. The message was cryptic: the past is always present. The future will reveal itself in time. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was something beneath the tree itself, something waiting to be uncovered. After meeting Kate for a quick lunch at the local diner, Emily told her about the plaque and how it felt like a sign. "You've got to go back," Kate urged, leaning forward with excitement. "Something big is happening there. I can feel it." "That's what I thought too," Emily replied. "But I need to figure out how to make the next move." "Just trust your instincts," Kate said, her eyes wide. "This town seems like it has a way of pulling people in, doesn't it?" Emily smiled. "It really does." That afternoon, Emily returned to the town square, her heart pounding in anticipation. The oak tree loomed in front of her, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets of Rosewood. She stood still for a moment, taking in the peaceful surroundings, before kneeling at the base of the tree once more. The roots stretched out like fingers, tangled and reaching for something buried deep within the earth. She ran her hands over the rough bark, her fingers brushing over the grooves and textures as she searched for something unusual. Then, her fingertips caught on a small indentation, something that felt different from the rest. With growing curiosity, she dug her fingers into the dirt around the indentation, slowly unearthing a small, weathered wooden box. Her breath caught in her throat as she gently pulled the box from its hiding place. It was old, the wood dark and cracked from years of exposure to the elements, but it had an intricate design carved into the top. A swirl of vines and leaves, the same as the patterns on the map she'd seen. Emily's heart raced. This was it. This was what she had been searching for. The treasure wasn't just an abstract idea, it was real, tangible. She hesitated for only a moment before carefully opening the box. Inside was a piece of parchment, yellowed with age, and a small pendant, a golden key shaped like a heart, intricately designed with delicate engravings. Emily unfolded the parchment, her hands trembling as she read the faded ink. It was a message. To the one who finds this key, know that it unlocks not just the past, but the future. Seek the place where the sun meets the horizon, where the earth is both solid and changing. There, you will find what is hidden. Emily's pulse quickened as the words sank in. She looked at the golden key in her palm, her mind racing. The message was clear. This key was not just a physical object, but a symbol of something deeper. Something that was tied to her journey, to her search for answers. She carefully placed the key and the parchment back in the box and tucked it into her bag. There was no time to waste. She had to find the next piece of the puzzle. The sun was beginning to set as Emily walked back through the town square, her thoughts swirling. The phrase, "where the sun meets the horizon, where the earth is both solid and changing," echoed in her mind. It felt like a riddle, one that could lead her to the next clue. She sat on a bench under the oak tree, staring at the sunset as it painted the sky with brilliant shades of orange, pink, and purple. The light was fading, but she felt a sense of clarity. The key symbolized more than just a physical lock, it was a metaphor for her own journey. She was unlocking parts of herself that had been buried, just like the box hidden beneath the tree. He nodded, his expression serious. "I suspected as much. The treasure, as I said, isn't just about gold or jewels. It's about understanding the deeper history of this town. About unlocking its secrets." Emily felt a sense of urgency. "I have the key," she said, pulling it from her bag and showing it to him. "And the message said to seek the place where the sun meets the horizon. Do you know what that means?" The man's eyes flashed with recognition, and for the first time, his calm demeanor shifted. "Yes, I do." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "There's a place, outside the town, where the sun sets over the cliffs by the lake. It's a place the founding families of Rosewood held sacred. They believed the land held the power to change lives, to reveal truths. If you go there with the key, you might just find what you're looking for." Emily's heart raced. She had always been drawn to the edges of things, to the boundaries where the world felt limitless. The idea of heading toward the cliffs, where the land met the horizon, felt like the natural next step in her journey. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with determination. "I'll go there right now." The man gave her a brief nod, as though he had been expecting this response all along. "Be careful, though. The journey ahead is not for the faint of heart. Not everyone who has sought the treasure has come back the same." Emily didn't let his words deter her. She had come too far to turn back now. Whatever awaited her at the cliffs, she was ready. With the golden key in her pocket and the sunset fading behind her, Emily set off toward the cliffs, feeling like she was on the precipice of something monumental. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. The journey was calling her, and she was ready to answer. The walk to the cliffs was long, but every step seemed to bring Emily closer to something she could feel deep in her bones. The town of Rosewood slowly faded behind her as she made her way out of the familiar streets and onto the winding path that led to the cliffs. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, and the air felt thick with anticipation. The words from the parchment echoed in her mind. "Seek the place where the sun meets the horizon, where the earth is both solid and changing." The sunset was imminent, and she knew she had to get there before the last light of day slipped away. The path she walked was narrow and overgrown, the grass and wildflowers brushing against her legs as she pushed forward. The sound of her footsteps, the only noise in the quiet, seemed almost too loud in the stillness of the evening. She felt a rush of nervous energy as she walked, the golden key heavy in her pocket, a constant reminder of how close she was to uncovering the truth. As she approached the edge of the cliffs, the landscape changed dramatically. The tall trees that had lined the path were replaced by jagged rocks and scattered boulders. The earth felt unstable underfoot, like it could give way at any moment. The cliffs rose up sharply, offering a breathtaking view of the valley below, bathed in the last hues of sunset, fiery oranges, reds, and purples mixing with the cool blues of the sky. She stood at the edge for a moment, taking in the vastness of the scene before her. The world seemed to stretch endlessly, the horizon blurred where the earth and sky met. It was a place that felt ancient, like it had witnessed countless stories unfold, yet it was completely untouched. The sheer magnitude of it made her feel small in comparison, but at the same time, there was a sense of peace, a feeling of being exactly where she needed to be. "This is it," she whispered to herself, her voice lost in the wind. She stepped forward cautiously, her boots crunching against the rocks as she moved closer to the cliff's edge. The air was thick with salt from the distant ocean, and the wind carried the scent of earth and the promise of something extraordinary. Emily could feel the key in her pocket, its weight a constant pull, urging her to continue. Somewhere along the cliff's edge, she spotted what looked like a small stone structure. It was barely visible, almost hidden by the brush and overgrowth, but it seemed to call to her. Without hesitating, Emily made her way toward it, her heart racing with every step. The stone structure was ancient, a ruin from a long-forgotten time. It was circular, about the size of a small room, and the stones that formed it were weathered, their surfaces rough and cracked. The entrance was a narrow archway, framed by thick vines that had overtaken the stone. It looked like a place that had been abandoned for centuries, a place where secrets had been buried and forgotten. Emily's breath caught as she stepped closer. She could feel something there, something tangible, waiting for her. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the golden key, holding it in her palm as she examined the ruins before her. She had no idea what she was looking for, but she knew this was where the key belonged. With trembling fingers, she moved the vines aside and stepped through the archway. Inside, the space was small and enclosed, the ceiling barely high enough to stand comfortably. It was dim, the only light coming from the fading glow of the sunset outside. But there, in the center of the room, was a stone pedestal. On the pedestal lay a small, intricately carved box, almost identical to the one she had found beneath the oak tree in the town square. It was the same size, the same shape, but this one had a strange symbol carved into the lid. An image of an eye, surrounded by swirling patterns. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she approached the pedestal. She placed the golden key in the lock on the box, feeling the cool metal click into place. With a deep breath, she turned the key. The box opened slowly, revealing another piece of parchment, older than the last, and a second key, this one silver and adorned with small emeralds. Emily's hands shook as she unfolded the new parchment and read the words scrawled in elegant handwriting. "The path is not always clear, and the treasure you seek is not what you expect. Look beyond the surface. Seek the truth beneath. Only when the heart is ready will you understand." The words were cryptic, but they stirred something deep within her. Emily stared at the silver key, her fingers tracing the emeralds. It was beautiful, almost mesmerizing. But there was something else, a sense that it, too, was a key not just to a physical place, but to something more, something hidden. She looked back at the stone pedestal, the ruins, and the vast landscape beyond. The sun was nearly gone now, the sky darkening, and the wind was growing colder. But she felt no fear. Instead, there was a sense of clarity. She wasn't just uncovering an old treasure. She was uncovering herself. With the silver key and the new parchment in hand, Emily felt a new sense of purpose. She wasn't finished yet. There was more to uncover, more to understand. And no matter how uncertain the road ahead seemed, she knew one thing for sure: she was ready to keep going. As she stood at the edge of the cliffs, looking out at the fading light, she realized that the treasure wasn't just buried beneath the earth, it was buried within her. The journey she had begun wasn't just about the past. It was about discovering who she was meant to be, and what truly mattered. And the keys? They weren't just physical objects. They were guiding her, unlocking parts of her heart that had been closed off for too long. The sun had finally disappeared, leaving the world in twilight, but Emily wasn't afraid of the darkness. She knew that no matter how long it took, she would follow the clues. She would uncover the secrets of Rosewood, of herself, and perhaps even discover something that had been hidden for far longer than anyone realized. The adventure was only just beginning. The night air was cool as Emily made her way back from the cliffs, the silver key still warm in her palm. Her heart was still racing from the discoveries she had made, the revelations that seemed to unfold faster than she could comprehend. She had found the key, and the words on the parchment had only deepened the mystery. "Look beyond the surface," it had said. "Seek the truth beneath." What did that mean? Emily kept asking herself as she walked back toward the town. The dark sky overhead was dotted with stars, the moon a pale crescent hanging above the quiet landscape. Despite the peace of the evening, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled toward something far greater than she had imagined. The town of Rosewood was still far in the distance as she walked along the winding road that led back home. Her thoughts were consumed with the idea of truth, a truth that had been buried beneath the surface of the town and beneath her own life. The words echoed in her mind, pulling her deeper into the mystery of her own existence. The more she uncovered, the more she realized just how intertwined her story was with the town's past. Her mind wandered back to the ruins at the cliffs, to the stone pedestal, to the silver key. What was hidden beneath the surface there? What did the treasure truly represent? She could feel it, like a thread weaving through her entire existence, pulling her closer to the answers she sought. As she reached the outskirts of the town, Emily's thoughts were interrupted by the faint sound of footsteps behind her. She turned around, expecting to see a passerby, but the road was empty. Only the soft rustle of the trees in the wind broke the silence. Her pulse quickened. Was she imagining things? She looked over her shoulder once more, but the path was still empty. Shaking her head, she decided to keep walking, but there was something about the night that felt different. The quiet was too still. She couldn't help but feel as though she were being watched. Suddenly, a voice called out from the darkness. "Emily." She froze, the hair on the back of her neck standing up. It was a voice she recognized, a voice she had hoped to never hear again. "Isabel?" Emily turned slowly, her heart pounding. Standing in front of her, bathed in the dim light from a nearby street lamp, was her estranged sister. Isabel had left Rosewood years ago, without so much as a word, vanishing without a trace. Emily hadn't heard from her since. "Emily," Isabel repeated, her voice softer now. "I didn't expect you to be out here so late. What are you doing here?" Emily's voice was sharp, her emotions torn between shock, confusion, and something else, something she couldn't quite place. Isabel had always been unpredictable, but this was different. Isabel took a step forward, her eyes scanning Emily's face. "I came back because I heard about the treasure," she said, her tone guarded, almost cautious. "I knew you would be the one to find it." Emily felt a rush of anger and confusion, but also a strange sense of curiosity. "You knew about it?" She stepped closer to her sister, trying to process what she was hearing. "You've been here this whole time?" Isabel nodded. "I had my reasons for leaving, but Rosewood has a way of calling people back." She glanced down at the silver key in Emily's hand, her expression unreadable. "You don't know everything, Emily. There's a lot more to this town than just its history. The treasure, it's not just some trinket. It's something much more powerful." "Powerful?" Emily repeated, her brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" "You disappeared, Isabel. You left me behind without a word. And now you're back, talking about power." Isabel's eyes softened. "I didn't leave you, Emily. I left the town. I couldn't stay after what happened. I couldn't be part of it anymore." She looked away, her expression troubled. "But I can't stay away forever. There's a reason you're here, and a reason I had to come back. The treasure is part of that reason." Emily felt a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "All this time, you've known something and you didn't say anything?" Isabel sighed, looking out at the town in the distance. "I couldn't tell you. Not then. But now it's different. There's no more running from it. I thought you'd find out eventually, but I didn't know it would be so soon." She paused. "The treasure you're looking for, Emily, it's not something you can just take. It's something you have to understand. And you're not going to figure it out by yourself. You need help. Emily's thoughts were swirling. Help? From Isabel? The sister who had disappeared without a trace? She looked at Isabel, searching her face for answers. The same person who had hurt her, left her behind, was now asking for her trust. It didn't make sense. What kind of help? Emily finally asked, her voice tight with suspicion. Isabel stepped closer, lowering her voice. I can't explain everything right now, but there are things about Rosewood, things about the treasure that you don't know. Things that were kept hidden for a reason. If you're serious about uncovering the truth, I can help you find the answers. Emily hesitated. The words were heavy with mystery, but there was something in Isabel's eyes that made her think this wasn't just some wild claim. It was as if Isabel had seen the same thing Emily had, felt the same pull to uncover the hidden parts of Rosewood. I don't know if I can trust you, Emily said quietly, her heart still battling between anger and the desire for answers. You left me, Isabel. You disappeared without a word, and now you expect me to just follow you into this. Isabel's eyes softened with regret. I know I hurt you. I can't undo that. But I'm asking for your trust now, Emily. Not because I want to control you or your journey, but because this is bigger than us. This is about the past of this town, our past, and the future we're walking toward. If we don't do this together, we'll never uncover the whole truth. Emily felt a tug in her chest, a pull towards something she couldn't explain. The past, the mystery, Isabel, everything was leading her here, to this moment. She could feel that her sister knew more than she was letting on, and despite everything, part of her knew that they had to work together if they were going to solve the puzzle. All right, Emily said slowly, the words tasting foreign on her tongue. I'll trust you. For now. Isabel nodded, relief flashing in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. We'll figure this out together. As they walked back toward the town, the silver key in Emily's hand felt heavier than ever, its weight a reminder of everything that was still to come. Together, they would uncover what had been buried beneath the surface of Rosewood and perhaps, in the process, find a way to heal the fractured bond between them. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Emily wasn't walking alone. The quiet hum of Rosewood at night seemed louder than usual as Emily and Isabel made their way through the narrow streets. The town felt like a place suspended in time, familiar yet somehow unfamiliar all at once. The streetlights cast long shadows on the cobblestones, and the houses, though cozy, seemed like they were hiding something, a secret buried beneath their white picket fences and well-tended gardens. As they walked side by side, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Isabel was hiding more than she was letting on. There was a weight in her voice when she spoke, a hesitation that made Emily uneasy. She wasn't sure she trusted Isabel fully, but something in her gut told her that she had to. So, Emily broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. What exactly are we looking for? What is the treasure really? Isabel didn't look at her immediately, keeping her eyes fixed ahead as they walked. There was a long pause before she answered, her voice low and careful. It's not a treasure like you're thinking. It's not gold or jewels. It's something deeper, something tied to the very foundation of this town. Emily's brow furrowed. What do you mean? What foundation? Isabel paused for a moment, and then, with a sigh, she stopped walking. Emily followed her lead, watching her sister carefully. Isabel's face was lit by the soft glow of a street lamp, her features softened with a mix of regret and determination. You have to understand, Emily, Isabel said slowly, her eyes locking with hers, Rosewood wasn't always like this. It wasn't always just a sleepy little town with friendly neighbors and quaint streets. This place was built on something much darker, a secret, one that has been buried for generations. The treasure is tied to that secret. Emily's pulse quickened. What secret? What are you talking about, Isabel? You're not making any sense. Isabel looked down at the ground for a moment, collecting her thoughts. I wasn't supposed to tell you this, but you're the one who found the key. You have the right to know. Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. Just tell me, what are we really dealing with here? Isabel took a deep breath, as if steeling herself for something difficult. The treasure, the key, all of it, it's part of a ritual, a pact that was made when Rosewood was founded. A pact that bound the town to something not entirely human. Emily felt her stomach drop at the words. What do you mean, not human? Isabel met her gaze, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and disbelief. I can't explain it all, not yet. But I'll tell you this. The treasure isn't just a physical object. It's a power. A power that, if unlocked, can change everything about this town, about the people here, and about us. The key you found? It's part of the puzzle. There are more keys, more pieces, and only when they're all together will the truth be revealed. Emily took a step back, her mind spinning. She wanted to argue, to dismiss it all as some wild fantasy, but deep down, she knew Isabel wasn't lying. There was too much at stake for this to be just a story. Why didn't you tell me this before? Emily asked, her voice shaking with a mix of frustration and fear. I couldn't, Isabel said, her voice barely audible. I didn't want to pull you into it, but now it's too late. The town is changing, Emily. Something is waking up. And if we don't find the rest of the keys and stop whatever's coming, we might lose Rosewood and everything we know forever. A cold shiver ran down Emily's spine. She felt a strange pull, as though everything in her life had been leading to this moment. The golden key, the ruins, the mysterious symbols, the puzzles that seemed to answer only with more questions. It was all connected, and she could feel it in her bones. So what now? Emily asked, her voice steady despite the overwhelming sense of urgency she felt. Isabel took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the dark streets around them as though she were expecting something, or someone, to emerge from the shadows. Now we find the rest of the keys. We need to unlock the final piece of the puzzle, and we have to do it before the town falls into the hands of whoever or whatever is behind this. Emily nodded, determination setting in. Then let's find them. Let's end this. Isabel gave her a small, almost reluctant smile. That's the spirit. But it won't be easy. The keys are hidden in places only a few people in Rosewood even know about. We'll have to be careful. We'll need to trust each other. Emily's heart skipped a beat at her sister's words. Trust. The very thing Isabel had broken when she left. But Emily realized, with a sinking feeling, that trust was the only way forward. They had no choice. As they resumed walking, the air felt heavier, charged with the weight of the knowledge Isabel had just revealed. The path ahead wasn't just a search for treasure. It was a battle against an ancient force that had been dormant for too long. The streetlights flickered as they passed, casting fleeting shadows that seemed to dance and move on their own. Emily glanced over at Isabel, her mind racing with questions she couldn't yet answer. What was this pact? What power had Rosewood been built on? And why was they, the ones meant to unlock it all? The town of Rosewood seemed to grow darker, its familiar streets twisting and shifting before her eyes, as though the very foundation of it was unraveling, revealing something hidden beneath the surface. Something old. The journey they were about to undertake was no longer just about finding answers. It was about survival. And Emily knew that the truth they were searching for would be as dangerous as it was elusive. The keys, the treasure, the power, they were all parts of something much bigger than either of them had imagined. And Emily had a feeling that with every step they took, the stakes would only rise higher. She just hoped they were ready for whatever came next. The following morning, Emily and Isabel set out with renewed determination. They had no time to waste. After everything Isabel had shared with her, Emily couldn't ignore the weight of the task ahead. The keys, the ritual, the mysterious power, they were all connected, and they had to find a way to stop it before it was too late. The stakes were higher than Emily had ever imagined. As they walked through the town, The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a golden glow over the sleepy streets of Rosewood. It seemed like any other ordinary morning, yet Emily could feel the tension in the air, as if something was waiting to be awakened. Her heart pounded in her chest, her thoughts racing. They walked in silence for a while, the only sound being the crunch of their footsteps on the gravel road. Emily couldn't shake the image of Isabel's face as she spoke of the treasure, the power, and the pact that had bound Rosewood for generations. What kind of power could a small town like Rosewood possibly hold? And why had it remained hidden for so long? Eventually, Isabel broke the silence. "We need to go to the library," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "It's the only place I can think of where we might find answers. The town's history, the origins of the pact, everything, it's all in there." "The library?" Emily repeated, her brow furrowed. "Why haven't we ever heard about this before?" Isabel hesitated, then answered quietly, "Because the library is hidden. Not many people know about it. It's buried beneath the town in the old tunnels. That's where the real history of Rosewood is kept, far from prying eyes." Emily's stomach dropped. Hidden tunnels? A secret library? It sounded like something straight out of a thriller novel, not a small town like Rosewood. But Isabel's expression was serious, and Emily knew she couldn't ignore this lead. "How do we get there?" Emily asked, her voice filled with a mix of disbelief and curiosity. Isabel nodded, glancing around to ensure no one was watching them. "There's a door beneath the town hall," she explained. "It's locked, but I know how to get in. I'll take you there." As they approached the town hall, the imposing stone building stood in the center of the town square. The clock tower above it chimed softly, signaling the early hour. Emily glanced up at it, feeling a strange sense of unease. How many people had walked by this place without ever knowing the secrets it held beneath its floorboards? Isabel led the way, walking toward the back of the building where a small, weathered door was tucked between two brick columns. She paused in front of it, her hand resting on the handle. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice low. Emily took a deep breath, her mind spinning. The entire town of Rosewood seemed to be a puzzle, and the library beneath the town hall felt like the final piece. There was no turning back now. "Let's do this," Emily said, her voice resolute. Isabel smiled faintly, then unlocked the door. It creaked open with a sound that made Emily's skin prickle. The air behind it was cool and damp, carrying the scent of old stone and earth. Isabel motioned for Emily to follow her, and they descended down a narrow staircase that spiraled deep into the earth. The stairs seemed to go on forever, the darkness surrounding them as they descended. Emily's pulse quickened with each step, her hand tightening around the silver key in her pocket. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, waiting for them to reach the bottom. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, they reached the bottom. Isabel paused, reaching for a lantern on the wall and lighting it. The soft glow illuminated the underground chamber, revealing rows of shelves filled with dust-covered books. The air was thick with the smell of aged paper and leather. This was it, the hidden library. "Here it is," Isabel whispered, her voice reverberating through the chamber. "This is where it all started." Emily's eyes widened as she took in the sight. The shelves were lined with ancient books and scrolls, all containing the history of Rosewood, its secrets, its origins, its pact with something otherworldly. Everything they needed was right here, waiting to be uncovered. "Where do we even start?" Emily asked, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information surrounding her. Isabel moved toward a table in the center of the room, where several old maps were spread out. "We start with these," she said, tapping a faded map that looked to be centuries old. "This map is part of the original documents that founded Rosewood. It's marked with symbols, the same ones we saw on the ruins at the cliffs." Emily stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the map. The symbols were intricate, their meaning unclear, but Emily could feel the connection between them and the key she carried. They were all part of the same puzzle. "We need to decode these symbols," Isabel said, her voice calm but with a sense of urgency. The map will lead us to the other keys, but we need to understand the meanings behind the symbols first. If we can figure that out, we'll know where to look next. Emily nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. She glanced at the shelves surrounding them, then at Isabel. You said there were books that explained everything. Where are they? Isabel pointed toward the back of the library, where a small alcove was tucked away. There, in the far corner. The books in that section are the oldest. They contain the history of the pact, the rituals, and the power that Rosewood was built on. But be careful, some of these books are dangerous. They're not meant for just anyone to read. Emily swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The truth about Rosewood was within her grasp, and nothing was going to stop her from finding it. With a deep breath, Emily walked toward the alcove, her footsteps echoing in the quiet chamber. She reached for the first book, its cover worn and faded with age. As her fingers brushed the leather binding, she felt a strange surge of energy, as though the book was alive, calling out to her. Taking the book from the shelf, Emily opened it carefully. The pages inside were written in a language she didn't recognize, filled with symbols and diagrams that seemed to pulse with an eerie glow. She felt a shiver run down her spine, but she knew she couldn't stop now. Isabel, look at this, Emily whispered, holding the book open for her sister to see. Isabel stepped over, her eyes scanning the pages. She gasped softly when she saw the symbols. This is it. This is the key to unlocking everything. Emily turned the page, her fingers trembling as she traced the unfamiliar symbols. As she did, the room seemed to grow colder, and a strange energy filled the air. They had uncovered the first piece of the puzzle. But Emily knew, deep in her gut, that this was just the beginning. The deeper they went, the more dangerous the truth would become. The air in the hidden library felt thicker now, charged with an energy that Emily couldn't quite explain. The further she and Isabel delved into the ancient texts, the more uneasy Emily became. Every page she turned seemed to reveal more cryptic symbols, more hints about the pact that bound Rosewood, and the unsettling sense that they were uncovering something that had been kept hidden for far too long. Do you think this town really has something to do with dark magic? Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. The weight of the question lingered in the air like an ominous cloud. Isabel, standing beside her, ran a hand through her hair, clearly troubled. I don't know. I didn't want to believe it either, but the more we learn, the more it's clear that something otherworldly is tied to Rosewood. The pact, the ritual, it's not just a story, Emily. It's real. Emily glanced at the pages again. The symbols on the pages appeared to be part of an ancient language, one that she couldn't understand but could feel in her bones. As her fingers traced over the worn edges of the parchment, she noticed something odd, a symbol that seemed to glow faintly, a subtle warmth radiating from the page. Isabel, look at this, Emily said, her voice tinged with both awe and fear. This symbol, it's glowing. Isabel leaned in closer, her brow furrowing. That's impossible, she muttered. The books here are old. They shouldn't react like that. But Emily couldn't deny what she was seeing. The symbol on the page seemed to pulse with an energy of its own, drawing her in. As her finger brushed across it, the book suddenly jerked in her hands, and for a brief moment, everything around them went still. The soft glow of the lantern flickered as if caught in an invisible wind. Then, as suddenly as it had happened, the room seemed to return to normal. The symbol was gone, leaving only the familiar, faded ink of the text. Emily blinked, her pulse racing. Did you feel that? Emily asked, her voice shaking. Something just happened. Isabel was silent for a moment, her eyes fixed on the book. She then nodded slowly. Yes, I felt it too. That symbol, it's part of the ritual. I think it's trying to lead us to the first key. The first key? Emily echoed, confused. What do you mean? Isabel took a deep breath, her expression solemn. I didn't want to say it earlier, but I think this symbol marks the location of the first key. The keys aren't just physical objects, they're parts of the ritual. Each one holds a piece of the power that was sealed when Rosewood was founded. And we have to find them before the wrong people do. Emily's mind raced as she processed Isabel's words. The first key. What could it be? Where was it hidden? And why had the symbol reacted to her touch? Before she could ask more questions, Isabel grabbed her arm. We need to go now. The energy in this room, it's changing. We've lingered too long. Emily nodded quickly, her head spinning with questions, but she knew they didn't have time for answers. They had to act fast. The two of them hurried out of the library, back up the spiral staircase, and into the light of the evening. The air felt heavier now, as though something was lurking just beyond their sight, watching, waiting. The quiet streets of Rosewood had never felt so oppressive. Isabel led Emily through the town, her pace quickening as they neared the outskirts. Emily glanced at her sister, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. The energy in the library, the glowing symbol, the mention of the first key. There was no denying that they were on the cusp of something dangerous. Where are we going? Emily asked as they neared the old cemetery at the edge of town. There's a place, Isabel replied, her voice tight. A place where the first key might be hidden. It's an old mausoleum, buried beneath layers of history. People forgot about it years ago, but the key is still there. The cemetery was eerily quiet as they entered. The gravestones stood like silent sentinels in the fading light, casting long shadows on the ground. Emily's heart thudded in her chest as she followed Isabel down a narrow path that wound through the rows of tombstones. The silence felt unnatural, as though the whole world was holding its breath. Finally, they reached the mausoleum, an ancient structure made of crumbling stone. Vines had crept up its walls and moss covered its surface, but Emily could still make out the faint outlines of a symbol etched into the stone, identical to the one they had seen in the library. This is it, Isabel said, her voice low. This is where the first key is hidden. Emily stared at the mausoleum, the weight of what they were about to do settling over her. The place felt ancient, as if it had been untouched for centuries. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been waiting for them to arrive. Isabel stepped forward, her fingers tracing the symbol on the door. This is the entrance. But the key is hidden inside, locked away by a series of puzzles. We need to solve them to access it. Emily felt a strange sense of dread wash over her. She could hear her own heartbeat in her ears as Isabel pushed open the door, revealing a dark interior. The air was musty and cold, and the faint smell of earth filled Emily's nostrils. Are you sure about this? Emily asked, her voice shaking. She was filled with a mixture of fear and excitement. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. But was she ready for what lay inside? Isabel turned to her, her eyes serious. We don't have a choice. The key is here, and we have to find it. The ritual has already begun, Emily. If we don't act now, it may be too late. With a deep breath, Emily stepped inside, the darkness enveloping her. The walls of the mausoleum seemed to close in around them, and the temperature dropped even further. Isabel lit a lantern, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls as they moved deeper into the mausoleum. The deeper they went, the more Emily could feel the presence of something ancient, something powerful watching them. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end as they reached the heart of the mausoleum. In the center of the room was a stone pedestal, its surface covered in dust and cobwebs. On top of the pedestal sat a small, ornate box, intricately carved with symbols that matched the ones in the books they had studied. Emily's heart raced as she approached the box. This was it, the first key. But as she reached for it, a low, rumbling sound echoed through the mausoleum, and the walls began to shake. The ground trembled beneath her feet. It was too late. They were no longer alone. Something ancient, something dark, had awoken. And it was coming for them. The ground beneath Emily's feet continued to tremble as the low, rumbling sound grew louder. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to stay calm. She looked at Isabel, who had frozen in place, her face pale and tense. The lantern flickered, casting long, eerie shadows on the stone walls. "Isabel, what's happening?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible over the growing noise. Isabel's eyes darted around the mausoleum, her hand reaching for Emily's arm, pulling her back from the pedestal. "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "This wasn't supposed to happen. The key, it's activated something. The seal is breaking." Emily's heart pounded in her chest as the shaking intensified. The stone walls groaned as though they were alive, shifting and cracking. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the temperature dropped even further. A dark, oppressive energy filled the room, and Emily could feel it pressing in on her from all sides. It was as though the mausoleum itself was trying to keep them trapped inside. "We need to get out of here," Emily shouted, but Isabel's grip tightened on her arm. "Not yet," Isabel said, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "We can't leave now. The key, it's the first part of the ritual. We have to finish it, or it will consume us all." Emily stared at her sister, her mind reeling. "Finish it? Are you insane? The entire town could be in danger. This place is falling apart." But Isabel wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the pedestal, on the ornate box that had somehow triggered this chaos. She stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached for the box. Emily's heart raced as she watched Isabel, but she couldn't bring herself to stop her. There was something in Isabel's eyes, a determination that Emily couldn't ignore. As Isabel lifted the box from the pedestal, a blinding light burst forth from within it, illuminating the entire mausoleum. Emily squinted against the light, feeling the strange, otherworldly energy surge around them. The rumbling stopped suddenly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Emily gasped for air, her skin tingling as though she had been submerged in cold water. "What? What just happened?" she managed to say, her voice shaky. Isabel opened the box slowly, revealing a small, intricately carved key, its metal surface gleaming in the dim light. It was like nothing Emily had ever seen before. The key was delicate, yet strong, its design far too complex to have been made by ordinary hands. It radiated an aura of power, and Emily could feel the pull of its energy deep within her. "This is it," Isabel whispered, holding the key up to the dim light. "This is the first key. The power of Rosewood is now in our hands." Emily stared at the key, her mind racing with questions. The first key. But what did it unlock? And why had it triggered such an intense reaction from the mausoleum? Before she could voice her thoughts, a sudden, chilling breeze swept through the mausoleum. The door they had entered from slammed shut with a deafening crash, trapping them inside. Emily spun around, panic surging through her veins. "We need to get out now," Emily cried, tugging at Isabel's arm. But Isabel was staring at the key in her hand, her face filled with a mix of awe and fear. "Something's happening," Isabel murmured, her voice distant. "The key, it's not just a key. It's the first part of the ritual. We're too late." Suddenly, the walls of the mausoleum began to shift again. The stone floor cracked beneath their feet as a deep, guttural voice echoed through the room, reverberating off the ancient stones. "You have awakened the seal," the voice growled, sending a wave of dread through Emily's entire body. "Now you must face the consequences." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Who is that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. Isabel backed away slowly, clutching the key in her hands as though it were her lifeline. "It's the guardian of the seal," she whispered. "The one who has kept the power of Rosewood hidden for centuries." The voice grew louder, more insistent. "You dare disturb the balance?" it boomed. "You have broken the pact. Now you will pay the price." Emily's heart raced. She could feel the energy in the room shifting, becoming darker, more dangerous. The air seemed to grow heavier with each passing second. The guardian, whatever it was awake, and it wasn't pleased. "We need to leave." Emily screamed again, but Isabel didn't move. She was frozen, staring at the key in her hands as though it held the answers to everything. But Emily didn't have time to wait. She grabbed Isabel by the arm, pulling her toward the door, but the walls were closing in. The mausoleum was no longer just a building, it was a trap. The stone walls began to crack and crumble, the floor beneath their feet giving way. "We have to finish this," Isabel said suddenly, her voice frantic. "The ritual. It's the only way to stop it." Emily spun around, panic surging through her. "Stop what? What do you mean?" Isabel was trembling, her eyes wide with fear. "The ritual must be completed. If we don't finish it, the Guardian will destroy everything. Rosewood, our town, everything will be consumed by the darkness. We're the only ones who can stop it." Emily felt a cold chill run down her spine as she realized the weight of Isabel's words. This was bigger than them. This was bigger than Rosewood. This was about a power that had been hidden for centuries, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. "But how do we finish it?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. "What do we need to do?" Isabel's grip tightened on the key. "The key, it's part of the puzzle. There's more to it, more keys, more steps. We need to find the others, and we need to complete the ritual before the Guardian fully awakens." Before Emily could respond, the ground beneath them shifted again, and the walls of the mausoleum cracked wide open, revealing a swirling vortex of dark energy. The voice of the Guardian echoed once more, louder than ever. "You cannot escape," it hissed. "The pact is broken. You will pay the price, together." As the dark energy surged toward them, Emily's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. They had to finish the ritual or Rosewood, and everything they knew would be lost forever. With the first key in hand, Emily and Isabel stepped into the darkness. The journey had just begun. The swirling vortex of dark energy grew louder, almost deafening as it surrounded Emily and Isabel. The cold, oppressive air seemed to close in on them, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open wider with each passing second. Emily's heart raced, and she could feel the blood rushing in her ears, the intense pull of the darkness threatening to consume everything. The mausoleum, once a quiet, ancient structure, now felt like the very mouth of hell itself. "We don't have much time," Isabel shouted, her voice barely audible over the sound of the chaos. She clutched the key in her hand, her knuckles white, but Emily could see the fear in her sister's eyes, the same fear that mirrored her own. "We have to finish the ritual," Isabel continued, her words more desperate now. "The other keys, they're out there, hidden around Rosewood. We have to find them before the Guardian fully awakens. If we don't, it will destroy everything." Emily felt her legs shake, her whole body trembling with the weight of what lay ahead. She had no idea what the ritual entailed, but she knew one thing for sure: they couldn't let the Guardian fully awaken. Not when the fate of their entire town and their lives was at stake. "Where do we start?" Emily asked, her voice trembling but steady. Isabel's face hardened with determination. "We start by finding the other keys. There are 2 more. The first is here in Rosewood's heart, the town square. The second, I'm not sure, but we'll figure it out." Before Emily could ask more questions, the dark energy around them began to shift. The walls of the mausoleum groaned and cracked, sending echoes through the air. The vortex in the center of the room pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, its edges sharp like the fangs of some monstrous creature, waiting to strike. Suddenly, a figure appeared from the shadows, tall, cloaked in dark robes, its face hidden behind a mask. It was the Guardian. The one who had spoken to them moments before. "You cannot stop what is already in motion," the Guardian's voice boomed, sending chills down Emily's spine. It was low, guttural, as though it came from somewhere deep beneath the earth. Isabel stepped forward, the key still clutched tightly in her hand. We have to finish the ritual, she said, her voice strong despite the fear that clung to every word. We won't let you destroy Rosewood. We'll stop you. The Guardian chuckled, a sound that sent shivers through Emily. It wasn't a laugh of humor, it was the sound of inevitability. You think you can stop me? The pact was broken long ago. The keys are already awakening. You are too late. Emily felt a surge of panic rise in her chest. What was happening? Were they really too late? Had they already lost? But Isabel's grip on the key tightened, and she turned to Emily, her eyes fierce with determination. We have one shot at this. We can't let him win. The Guardian's form shifted as though it were made of shadows and smoke, and its presence loomed larger in the darkened mausoleum. You think you have power over this? The keys were meant to be destroyed. The pact was sealed to prevent this from happening. Emily swallowed hard, her mind racing. She remembered what they had learned in the hidden library, the pact, the ritual, the legend of the keys. If the Guardian was right and the pact had been broken, then this was all far bigger than they had imagined. They weren't just fighting for Rosewood anymore, they were fighting for their very lives. Isabel, Emily whispered, how do we stop it? How do we finish the ritual? Isabel glanced back at her, her face pale but resolute. We have to find the other two keys before the Guardian gets to them. Once we have all three, we can seal the power. But we're running out of time. The Guardian's form shifted again, and the air grew colder, the dark energy pressing closer. The floor beneath their feet began to crack, the shadows stretching out like tendrils reaching for them. You cannot escape me, the Guardian hissed. You will be consumed by the power of the pact, just as the others were. You are nothing but pawns in a game far older than you. Before Emily could respond, Isabel shouted, "Run!" No! With a burst of adrenaline, Emily grabbed her sister's hand, and together they turned, sprinting toward the entrance of the mausoleum. But as they reached the door, the dark energy surged forward, blocking their path. The walls of the mausoleum seemed to close in, the air thick with an unrelenting pressure. Emily could barely breathe, the weight of the darkness almost suffocating. The Guardian's voice echoed behind them, a chilling reminder of their peril. You cannot outrun what you have awakened, it said, its tone cold and final. Isabel yanked Emily away, pulling her toward a small, hidden door in the back of the mausoleum. Emily barely registered the movement, her heart pounding in her chest as they ran. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow passageway, dark and winding. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the corridor, and Emily felt a growing sense of dread. We can't stop, Isabel said, her voice urgent. The key is close. We have to keep going. Emily nodded, her mind spinning as they hurried through the dark passage. Every instinct told her to turn back, to escape before it was too late. But there was no turning back now. The ritual had already begun, and they were tied to it, bound by the secrets of the town and the darkness that lurked beneath it. The passage opened into a small, hidden chamber beneath the town square, and the air was thick with dust and ancient energy. In the center of the room, on a stone pedestal, lay the second key. It was smaller than the first, its surface worn and faded, but it glowed with a faint, eerie light. Isabel stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached for the second key. This is it, she whispered. The second key. Now we just need to find the third one. As Isabel touched the key, the ground beneath them trembled once more, and the air grew even colder. The walls of the chamber seemed to close in, and Emily felt a sense of foreboding wash over her. The Guardian's voice echoed again, louder this time. You think you can stop me? You are too late, it intoned, its voice filling the room. The third key is already in my possession. A chill ran down Emily's spine. If the Guardian had the third key, then they were out of time. Isabel looked at Emily, her eyes wide with fear. We have to hurry. If the Guardian finishes the ritual before we do, it's over for Rosewood, for everyone. Before Emily could respond, A shadow flickered in the corner of the chamber. The temperature dropped, and the room seemed to darken. The Guardian was here, and it was coming for them. The race against time had just become even more dangerous. The darkness in the chamber seemed to pulse, growing heavier by the second. Emily could feel the weight of it pressing in on her chest, as if the very air had turned to stone. Her breaths came in shallow gasps, and she instinctively stepped closer to Isabel, who was holding the second key with a tight grip, her knuckles pale. The room felt alive with energy, as though the walls themselves were breathing, suffocating them in a dense, unnatural atmosphere. The cold was unbearable, the kind of chill that seeped into your bones and made your skin feel like ice. They had found the second key, but it was clear this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even further, and the shadows in the room seemed to warp, shifting and twisting into a form. The silhouette of the Guardian materialized from the darkness, taller and more imposing than before, its face obscured by a mask that seemed to swirl with the very essence of the abyss. "You have made a grave mistake," the Guardian's voice reverberated through the chamber, deep and resonant. "The keys should have stayed hidden. You were never meant to find them. You were never meant to have this power." Emily's heart raced in her chest, a mix of fear and determination flooding her veins. She glanced at Isabel, who stood rooted in place, her face etched with worry but also fierce resolve. Isabel knew what they had to do. "We will stop you," Isabel said, her voice ringing out despite the terror that twisted her insides. "The ritual isn't over. We still have a chance." The Guardian's laugh echoed through the chamber, dark and mocking. "You are fools," it said, its voice laden with ancient malice. "The third key is already mine. Rosewood will fall, and you will be the ones to deliver it." Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. The third key was with the Guardian? That meant their race against time had just become a life-or-death struggle. There was no margin for error now. "Where is it?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling but sharp. "Where is the third key?" The Guardian raised a hand, and the shadows in the room seemed to respond, swirling around it like a dark cloud. "It is no longer in your hands. The power that was sealed long ago is now free. I have claimed it." "Then why are you still here?" Isabel spat, her voice growing bolder. "If you have the third key, why don't you finish the ritual? Why don't you destroy Rosewood?" The Guardian's masked face seemed to flicker with annoyance. "The ritual is not for me to finish. You, the ones who awakened the seal, will complete it. You will be the ones to see the end of Rosewood." The words hit Emily like a punch to the gut. Was it true? Were they truly the ones destined to end this town? She refused to believe it. No, they couldn't let this town be destroyed. Not like this. Not after everything they had fought for. "We won't let that happen," Emily said, her voice unwavering. "We'll finish the ritual. Together." Isabel turned to Emily, her face serious, and nodded. "We don't have a choice. We need the third key. We can't let the Guardian control it." Emily glanced at the first two keys in Isabel's hands. The weight of them, the responsibility, pressed down on her. They had to find the third key, the one that would complete the ritual and either save Rosewood or doom it forever. The Guardian took a step forward, and the shadows seemed to shift with him, swirling around his feet. "You cannot defeat me," it growled. "The pact has been broken. You are too late." But Emily was already moving, her heart hammering as she took a step toward Isabel. "We aren't too late. We just need to finish this." Isabel looked at her sister, eyes blazing with determination. "There's a secret in the ritual. The key, the third one, isn't just a key. It's a part of the puzzle. It's hidden where the town's heart lies. We need to go to the center of Rosewood." The Guardian's form seemed to flicker in the dim light, its presence growing darker, more sinister. "You think you can reach the center? You think you can overcome what you've unleashed?" it said, its voice seething with fury. "You have no idea what you've awakened. You will never make it." Emily felt a surge of defiance rise within her. She was tired of running, tired of hiding in fear. They were fighting for more than just themselves now. They were fighting for Rosewood, for everyone who lived in this town, and for every dream they had built. They couldn't let it fall to darkness. "We'll make it," Emily said firmly, her gaze never leaving the Guardian's shadowed form. "We'll finish this. And we'll stop you." Without waiting for a response, Emily grabbed Isabel's arm, pulling her toward the entrance of the chamber. The Guardian moved to stop them, but a force, born of something far greater than they had anticipated, surged through the room. Isabel held the keys tightly, her hand glowing with an otherworldly light, and the dark energy recoiled, as though afraid of the power they held. They ran, as fast as they could, through the narrow passage and up toward the town square. The ground shook beneath their feet, and the sky above them seemed to swirl with an unnatural storm, as if the very air were charged with chaos. They had to reach the center of the town. It was the only way to finish the ritual and to stop the Guardian. As they emerged from the passage, the full weight of the storm outside hit them. The wind howled like a living thing, the sky swirling with unnatural colors. In the center of the square stood a fountain, a relic from the town's early days, a symbol of life and hope. It had always been there, unchanged, untouched by time. Emily knew, without a doubt, that this was the heart of Rosewood, the place where everything had started, the place where the ritual would end. "Isabel, we have to do this now," Emily shouted, the wind threatening to tear the words from her mouth. Isabel nodded, her face grim but resolute. She stepped forward, placing the first 2 keys on the stone of the fountain. With trembling hands, she raised the 3rd key, the one they had been chasing, high above her head. The moment her hand touched the 3rd key to the other 2, a blinding flash of light erupted, the energy surrounding them, building to an unbearable crescendo. The Guardian's voice, deep and full of rage, echoed through the storm. "No! This is not the way it was meant to be. You cannot stop what has been set in motion." But it was too late. The keys, glowing with an intense light, began to resonate, their power merging together in a force that shook the very foundation of Rosewood. The dark energy that had plagued the town for centuries began to fade, dissipating into the air like smoke, leaving only the calmness of dawn in its wake. The storm vanished. The ground stopped shaking, and the weight that had burdened Rosewood for so long lifted, leaving only peace behind. Isabel and Emily stood in the center of the town square, surrounded by the silent, broken pieces of the past. They had done it. Against all odds, they had finished the ritual. And Rosewood was saved. The Guardian's presence was gone. The keys had sealed the power away for good, and the town would never again fall under its shadow. Emily turned to Isabel, her heart still racing, but filled with relief. They had done it. Together. "We did it," Emily whispered. Isabel nodded, a tired but triumphant smile crossing her face. "We saved Rosewood. It's over." But even as they stood there, amidst the ruins of the past, they knew their journey wasn't over. The future, uncertain and full of possibilities, awaited them. But whatever came next, they would face it together. And that, Emily knew, was enough. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?